My name is Beth Keene. I'm the museum's executive director, and I just wanted to quickly welcome everyone here today. Thank you for coming. We have this beautiful program in store for you, and I encourage you to please stay after for our Yom HaShoah ceremony, if you can still make it. That begins at 12:00. For those of you who haven't been to our museum before, please come back. We can give you a private tour whenever you'd like. We're a free museum open 7 days a week. And we were founded by survivors in 1961. We are actually the oldest Holocaust museum in the United States, founded by survivors. It's a really interesting story. So I am going to hand it over to Jordana Gessler. Thank you.
This is such an important thing for us to continue this education and here on Yom HaShoah. And actually the 70th anniversary of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It really is a day where we're not just remembering the victims of the Holocaust, but we're also remembering the people who stood and did something to help someone else. So it's my honor to invite Dan Dever to come and speak. He's going to introduce Simone and Alice, and we're going to all spend this time, the next about an hour, really understanding these incredible relationships that form between the sides of the world. So you're out in front of you, Dan.
Are we hot? You guys can hear me okay? Okay, Dan Netter, live in LA. He's a TV producer here. And before I get started, I just wanted to thank Beth Keene and Jill Brown and Jordana Gessler for inviting us here and for their hospitality so we can tell this story to you today. So let me tell you why we are all gathered. And by the way, thank you all for coming today as well. My whole life, I've heard the story about how my family escaped from Nazi-occupied, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Belgium, and survived the horrors of the Holocaust. One of the seminal incidents that took place was when my grandfather, Herman Gerstel, a diamond dealer who lived in Antwerp, and his 16-year-old son, Zoltan, fled one night into the darkness with a hired smuggler. Besides their home, they left behind the women and the children. My grandmother, Frida, her mother, Blanche, my mother, Alice, my aunt, Stella, and my 5-year-old uncle, Armand. Herman instructed them to go to Brussels the following morning. There, despite the Nazi prohibitions against it, friends would hide them in their home until the smuggler's wife could come and fetch them. They stayed with this family for over a week, living above their little leather shop, making sure to stay silent so the Nazis who were shopping below wouldn't hear them. My mother recalls it was like living like Aunt Frank. It was very risky and very frightening for everyone. Finally, the smuggler's wife did show up and escorted my family out of Belgium into unoccupied France, where in the city of Lyon, they successfully reunited with my Uncle Zoli and my Grandpa Herman. From Lyon, they went to Marseille, where my grandfather spent 3 months and a fortune, 470,000 francs, to book passage on a ship that would leave from Casablanca, kind of like in the movie, you know, with the letters of passage, they had them. 10 days later, on January 20th, 1942, they boarded the SS Serpa Pinto, and they sailed to Havana, Cuba, and freedom. I thought this was a pretty interesting story. So about a decade ago, I began to research the details of their escape. I asked my mom the name of the family in Brussels who hid our family from the Nazis, but too many years had passed and she could no longer remember their names. Then one day last summer, it's my cousin James. Are you near a computer, he asked me. I said, well, I can be. Why? He said, I want to send you something in an email. I'm pretty sure you've seen it. Well, what he sent were 2 screenshots of a book that he found online written in French. The cover, which I quickly translated into English, read, "The Child of the 20th Convoy." And there was an inside page from that book, and he had highlighted the names Gerstel several times, including my mother, Alice, his mother, Stella, and our uncle, Zoltan. So I started furiously typing the French into Google Translate, God bless them. And we learned that the author, this guy Simon Gronowski, had published letters that were written in the early 1940s by his sister, Ita. She spoke of the Gerstel family, the diamond dealers from Antwerp, and she wrote of attending my mother's 13th birthday party, describing the beautiful apartment she lived in and their rooftop terrace. She also confessed her love for my uncle Zoltan, confident that he loved her back. I told James that the name Ita sounded familiar to me, so I began to search my computer for photos that I had scanned way back in 2011. Voila, there was Ita, a portrait of a beautiful young woman. On the back of her picture, she wrote an inscription in English, and she said, "Well, all right, and that forever, your friend Ita," and she dated it, October 6, 1941. So I immediately conferenced my mom into our phone conversation, and I explained to her what we had found. She says Ita was my girlfriend in Belgium, and that she and Zoli were deeply in love. She asked me, "Who wrote this book?" I said, "Simon Gronowski." She gasped, "Simon?" And I said, "Simon, okay, suppose." "Danny," she says to me, "this is the family who hid us in Brussels until the smuggler's wife came. Is Simon alive?" I said, "I have no idea, Mom. The book was written in 2002. We'll have to find out." So James and I went looking for an email address, and it took about a week to get one and to hear back from Simon. And I'm telling you, every day I checked my email box to see, did he get it? Is he alive? Has he written me back? That was a long week. Suddenly, I see an email, and it says in the subject line, bolded, in English, "Love, love, love." I continue to read it. It says, "Yes," wrote Simone in decent English, "I speak much in my book about the family Gerstel and the great love between Zoltan and my sister Ita. I remember very well," he said, "your emails make me happy, but also nostalgic." So this is pretty amazing that we found this. Some even would say, a miracle. After all these years, Simon Gronowski was alive and living in Brussels. So meantime, over the past several months to the day today, Simone and Alice have spoken by phone, via email. And coincidentally, Simone was already coming to America. So great his trip to pay a visit with us today here in Los Angeles. So I'm here to report that on Tuesday of this past week, after 76 years, these two childhood friends reunited in person. As you can imagine, it was a lovely moment, and my mom will get up and speak and share with you what it was like. But first, let us hear of the 20th Convoy. After all, the man wrote a book, right? So he has a story to tell. Before I introduce him, let me just say, this is his grandson, Romain. And this is his other grandson, Sebastian. But Romain is here to help Simone because his English is not perfect, though he will address you in English today. But afterwards, if there's any questions, Romain can translate, and we can continue with any questions that you may have. So before I go on too much longer. It's my great pleasure to honor, it's my honor to introduce to you to my mother's long-lost friend, a member of the family with whom we would not even be here today. So please welcome kindly Simone Gronowski.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm so happy and honored to be here in Los Angeles in this beautiful Holocaust Museum. Great honor for me. Before the war, the two families, Gerstel and Gronowski, were great friends. And I loved the children, Gerstel. In first place, Zoltan, a young man almost 17 years old. Alice, the girl, the Ita. And Zoltan was the big love. Stella Armaneke, this family. But the Nazis killed mother and my sister, the gas chamber of Auschwitz-Birkenau. And my father, who had died broken heart in 5. As for myself, on March 17, 1903, when I was 11 years old, the Nazis caught me, threw me into a cell of the Gestapo headquarters in Brussels. And the next day, they took me to a big prison, the Dossin Caserne, military barracks transformed in gathering transit camp in a little town in Belgium, Mechelen. And 1 month later, on April 1943, it caught 20th convoy. This long train with more than 30 from England to Auschwitz. I didn't understand what was going out. I was still in my world of Boy Scouts. I didn't realize that I've been condemned to death and that this train would lead me to the place of my execution. And by miracle, I jumped the train. My family was family. My father was born in a small village, Ashtetl, Poland. But after the First World War, my father fled from Poland, fled the anti of Poland. He entered in Belgium illegally, undercover, as a clandestine. This man, today I support undocumented people, migrants, refugees. But my father received He was late. And he started a leather good business. Leather. Success, this business. My mother, literally, they married back in 23, and they had 2 children. And me born in Brussels, October 12, 31. So today I'm 86 years old. My sister was a brilliant student at high school in Brussels. She was first in Greek, in Latin, literature, and she was a very great classic pianist who loved jazz. And me, I was in the primary school, and above all, a Cub Scout. But meanwhile, Hitler had conquered several countries in Europe, you know, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Denmark, Norway. But the May 10, 40, he attacked Holland, France, and Belgium and occupied this country. And Hitler had a paranoia. He wanted to kill all the Jews. And measures were rapidly taken, always against the Jews. And the people obeyed this rule, because they were afraid that if they didn't, and they were reported to the Nazis, to be sent to another camp in Belgium. Brendonk was since September 40 a camp of interrogation, torture, and executions. And the people also obeyed because they ignored that each measure was a step towards the death, a diabolic jeer, a fatal crescendo towards the death. If they had known this, they would have revolted, as did the young people in the Warsaw ghetto, who preferred to die whilst fighting. The Nazis attacked a population in a cowardly and treacherous manner. Cowardly because they attacked women, children, babies, elderly people, and treacherous because one day they announced that the Jews had to go to work and work in the work camps. But it was a trap. On arrival, they hadn't to work. They were put in big rooms and gassed to death. Then the corpses were burnt in cremation ovens. And in July 42, they opened the Dossin barrack and started to round people up on the street and in their homes. So, September 1st, 42, my family went to hide in a small apartment. And 6 months later, March 17, 43, about 9 o'clock in the morning, I was at breakfast with my mother on my right My sister opposite me, on the table the coffee was warm, and my sister had prepared my James sliced bread with jam. My sister was older than me by 7 years. Suddenly, two Germans stormed into our apartment. One of them yelling, Gestapo, Ausweis, Ausweis, a paper, passport. My mother turned white, stood up, and gave them her passport. Luckily, my father was absent. I was ill and I was hospitalized. Hospitalized.
He was supposed to.
The Gestapo officer asked about him. My mother told him he's dead. And so she saved him. They ordered, pack your suitcase, quickly, you go away. My mother asked where? You go to the Dossin barrack in Mechelen. My mother points at me with her finger. And asks them, the little two, yes, the little two, were taken by them first in the cell of the Gestapo quarter in Brussels, and the next day to the Dostin barrack. My sister had another situation because she was already of Belgian nationality, and at that time the Nazis didn't deport the Belgian Jews. I stayed in this caserne a whole month. It was not a concentration camp, but a place of gathering, registering, transiting. It was in fact the antechamber of death, but people didn't know it. And there were a lot of children. For the Nazis were a child until the age of 16. Beyond 16, they would keep people as slaves, make them work without eat and drink in the cold and in the heat. The slow death. For me, there are no chance. It was immediately the gas chamber. And why so many children there? Because the Nazis wanted to kill people, to do a genocide. And when one aims at the genocide, one first of all should kill the children, because the children are the future of the people. During the whole month spent in this prison, I never heard the name Auschwitz. And on the evening of April 18th, a man came in our room and said, "You go away tomorrow, the train is there, waiting for you." People asked, "Where?" "You go for work." People, "Yes, but where? Don't be worried." And the next day, I said goodbye to my sister, who remained interned in the barrack, not knowing that I would never see her again. I left this awful barrack with my mother between two rows of armed soldiers, straight towards a gaping black hole. And I had to get on a cattle car with my mother and 50 other people. The wagon. In this wagon, a little straw of the ground, very dark. The light came only through two small openings, and in the evening it was total darkness. And soon after leaving Mechelen, I felt that the train stopped. I heard screams and yelling from the Nazi guard and shootings. And after the war, I knew the fact. It was the attack by 3 young members of the Belgian resistance. They opened one wagon, not mine, and liberated 17 people. Tu m'as dit qu'ils ont mis une lampe en paix sur les rails avec un papier rouge. Signal d'arrêt pour le machiniste.
You put a red light on the rail, like this. The guy who was driving the train, that's signal alert, and he has to stop. They did that to stop the train.
The train then continued, and I fell asleep on the ground in the arms of my mother, with the feeling that men of my wagon were trying to open the sliding door from inside. I have to explain my escape. Suddenly my mother woke me up. The train was moving, but the door was open. She took me by my hand and led me up to the open door. 2 or 3 people jumped off the train before me, and when it was my turn, my mother helped me down onto the step, lowered me so that my feet were on the footstep. She held me by my shirt and my shoulder, but at first I did not dare to jump because this train was going too fast for me. And the last words I ever heard of my mother are in Yiddish. Der Zug geht zu schnell. The train go too fast. But at the moment the train slowed down and I jumped. I landed smoothly onto the tracks and I waited my mother, expecting that she would jump too. But the train stopped completely and I heard the guard who came from the front of the train in my direction with yelling and shooting at me, firing shots. They had noticed something. My mother could no more jump, because she would be caught immediately. My first idea was to run forward and going back to my carriage to join her and not to be caught. But in order to do that, I would need to go in their direction. Then suddenly, in a kind of reflex, I turned left and I ran at full speed through the woods. I was all night. I had not fear, and I hummed in the mood the popular Glenn Miller song during the occupation. It was the way to encourage myself. I ran a small house which gave. I worked all the night. I arrived and down in a village and got a small house which gave me trust. I rang the bell And I say to the lady, Madame, I played near here with children. I got lost and I have to go back to Brussels to my father. I could not find anything better than this strange explanation. What did the little French speaking boy do in Flemish country? Closed town and full of mud. 80 kilometers from Brussels. I was in the Belgian province, Limburg. She took me to a neighbor who took me on his bike to the next town and dropped me in the living room of a gentleman. The sight of this man with his uniform and a gun in his belt terrorized me. I say to myself that this man would bring me back to the Nazis. He asked me what had happened, and I kept telling him I played and got lost. He don't believe me. He entrusts me to his wife, takes his bike and goes to the train station where he learns the history of the train. This man returns and said to me, I know everything. You were in the train with the Jews. You have escaped, but you must not be afraid. I am a good Belgian, and I will not betray you. And then I confessed it to him and fell into his arms, crying, and told him about my mother. His wife washed me, fed me. He helped me to return to Brussels, and the same evening I was in Brussels in the arms of my father. So it was April 20, 43, and I have yet to wait 17 months for the liberation of Brussels. On September 3, 44. For 17 months I was hidden in Catholic family, separated from my father. I changed 2-3 times of hiding for security. When I arrived in a family, I went to see first in the attic to see how I could flee through the roofs if the Gestapo came looking for me. Every bell rang, I was afraid. Almost every night I dreamed that I was being chased by the Nazis. But during these 17 months, Hitler will also deport the Belgian Jews, and my sister will leave on the September 1943 with the convoy number 22. And when the Allies entered Germany in the spring of 45 and discovered the concentration camp, corpses mountain, gas chamber, crematorium, my father understood that his wife and daughter would not come back and died heartbroken in July 45. And I was left alone. And during 60 years, I scarcely talk about all this. I wanted to live for the present and the future, for joy and friendship. But now I speak for 5 reasons. I speak here in Los Angeles, but everywhere, in school, in France, in England, even in Germany. And the young people are fantastic. I want to fight against negationism. The Holocaust deniers say that all of this is not true. They say there were no gas chambers, no crematorium, no mass murder. I only wish that were right, because then I would have kept my family. I can say to these deniers, where is my mother? Where is my sister? These deniers are so dangerous. They deny the crimes of the past to commit others further tomorrow, and it's my duty to testify. Whoever hears a witness becomes a witness in turn. I want to thank the heroes who risked their lives to save me. The 3 young resistance members that stopped my train. This act is the only action of it during the entire Second World War. The policeman in Belgium, who has not betrayed me, who has had protect me. If the Nazis had found that Belgian policeman had protect a Jewish escaped child, they would shoot him. This man is a hero. And the Catholic family who then hit me in their home in Brussels and treat me as their own child for 17 months are heroes. And without them, I would not now be a father and a grandfather. The first hero is my mother. She put a little boy on the step of the carriage and faced me towards freedom in life. But she continued the journey to death in the gas chamber of Auschwitz. I also speak on behalf of victims of Hitler. There were 6 million Jews. They were victims of Hitler, including 1.5 million children. But Hitler did not kill only the Jews. He killed gypsy, the handicapped, homosexual, socialist, poets, and many others. And there have been in history other genocides, including Armenians in 1915, Rwanda's in 1994. So I speak on behalf of all victims of all barbarities. And I want to fight against fascism, racism, anti-Semitism, of which I was victim. But I speak especially to the young people, for the young people. And I say here in Los Angeles that USA and Belgium are beautiful countries of freedom, peace, mutual respect and democracy. And I've asked the young people, keep our countries that way, so that you, your children and grandchildren never have to encounter the barbarity the way I do. Today, ladies and gentlemen, dear friend, I have not brought to you a message of sadness, but one of hope and happiness. Because yes, life is beautiful, but also an everyday battle. And I am happy. I'm not sad, I'm happy. And more because I meet you. As a victim of criminal hatred, I never had hatred. But I confess that I've been very unhappy and that I cried a lot. And I had rather forgiveness than hatred. Despite the tragic events of yesterday and those of today, because even today there are people in the world who still suffer, men who still suffer. I'm keeping my faith in the future because I believe in human goodness. And your invitation, you're welcome to my faith more stronger. Long live peace and friendship between men.
So I told you it was a miracle. Now you can see it's even more of a miracle that he's here today. I mentioned that the two of them reunited on Tuesday. My mom would like to share with you what it was like for her. And so please allow me to introduce my mom, Alice Gerstel Weit, to fill you in on the rest of the story.
Okay. Well. A little lightness now after all this heavy story. What you have not heard is the telling of the actual meeting that took place last Tuesday. The emotions running amok. The anticipation for months after month of wondering who this 10-year-old lovable boy whom I loved had become. After living his life and overcoming the tragedy of his youth, I could only relate to the 10-year-old child, and I did not know the gentleman at my front door. In vain I searched for the Petit Simon, but alas, too much time had elapsed, just couldn't find him. But I do know that the 10-year-old whom I loved resides inside this strange man, and that I was in the presence of a long-lost young boy. All grown up and grown old, who had lived a lifetime, as did I. But we quickly became as two mature people, as though no time had passed. Simon always tells me that I am his only living adopted family, who is connected to his path. But my response is, I am his only immediate family member. And then I ask, do you know how many people your mom saved besides you? My sons and their descendants. I had 3 siblings, and I count 11 just on my side. You see, Simon, your mom was the true personification of the saying, if you save one life, you save all humanity. You know, Simon, I have been thinking very hard about why this reunion happened, and I've come up with a theory. I know you are a staunch atheist, and I say this in a non-acquisitivo, only nominativo, and indeed, who can blame you? But, Simon, you have not recited the Kaddish for your deceased family. And they knew that I was the only venue through which this might come to pass. And so, Simon, I hope that you will find it in your heart to join me in reciting the Kaddish for your mom, whose yahrzeit is next week. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to report that Simon, for the first time this morning or yesterday morning, joined me in reciting the Kaddish for his mom and our Savior.
So we have some time for a few questions from the audience. Simone, how did it feel for you meeting Alice? We heard from Alice, but I want to hear from...
It was very emotional for me, for you also. I always remember the name Alice, but I was without news of this family during so many times, much time. And to see her, it was very sensitive for me, because I'm sensitive. I'm very emotional. I cried easily.
You mentioned that you speak to classrooms, and you've spoken to classrooms in Germany. What do you speak about, and what is the reaction of the students?
They are positive. They are against the crimes of their parents.
Et il n'y a pas de différence entre les jeunes Français, les jeunes Allemands. Ils sont tous formidables.
He loves all the young people. Besides, they are French, Germans, from Holland. They are all exceptional. He loves them.
Another question right here. I'm gonna get.
We heard the names of Alice's siblings, and I apologize if I didn't catch the name of Simon's mother, but I would love to know the name of that woman so that we can memorialize her in the future.
Ma mère s'appelait Shana Kaplan.
Her name was Hannah Kaplan. Kaplan.
Mais en Belgique, elle a anticipé son nom en 26.
In Belgium, she franchised her name in Agnès.
La plupart des Juifs ont changé leur nom yiddish en nom français.
Most of the Jewish changed her name to franchise it.
The name of my mother was Shana Kaplan. From Lithuania, from not far from Vilno, Vilnius, and Kovno, Shana.
Lithuania.
Hi, my name is Eva. Hi, and I was born in Czechoslovakia. We have lots of in common. I am also a child of the Holocaust survivor, and I'm trying to get to the also young generation. I speak at this museum, I speak different schools and temples, so Holocaust never happened again. Unfortunately, we have to share the story, but we are doing our part, and I appreciate this, and so nice to meet you.
I think it's important for people. Hello. So Eva speaks at our museum every week, and last year we had over 17,000 students from all over LA come to the museum, and every single one of them heard from a survivor. They listened to a survivor, they had dialogue with a survivor, and this year we'll probably have over 20,000 students. So every day we have 3 or 4 survivors speaking at the museum. It is so important. And oh, we have one question over here. Okay.
Hi, my name is Andrea, and my question to you is, now that you have met in this past week, will you document and write a sequel to your book, so it's in writing your story of this last week? I'm sure it has a lot of emotion, and it's important for the first book to have has a little bit of a.
I understand. But why not a question to Alice? Only for me. But, I will write a new edition of my book in May. And I will speak about this event in Los Angeles. It's beautiful fact here. It's very important. And what Alice has said is marvelous. She said that my mother had saved not only four people, but so many more. Because in the Talmud they say, who saved one life saved the whole humanity. And this is the proof of this. Have I good answer to your question? Yes?
Here, we now have seen in Europe, all over, East and West, and in the United States, the resurgence of Nazism, white supremacy, and hatred, anti-Semitism. We have seen now in the news throughout Europe, East and West, in the United States, the resurgence of anti-Semitism and Nazism, most recently in Charlottesville. Okay, so you are aware of this phenomenon. So how do you maintain your optimism relating to the young? So I'd ask your son to translate that. Thank you.
Good question. And I thank you for your question, dear friend.
You are welcome. We are both Pharisees.
I'm optimist. I believe in the human goodness. When you see that ordinary policeman risks his life to save me, it is a proof that the goodness exists. And you know, 3 weeks ago in France, a policeman has given his life for an otage.
So yeah, there were a terrorist attack 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago in France, and one policeman gave his life for another hostage. And
yes, no, it is a proof of the goodness. And I optimist. And I've said, life is beautiful, and I'm happy. And life is a struggle of every day, and I fight every day against anti-Semitism. And I speak so, not for a Jewish audience, no. You are all agree with me, of course. I say in audience, Christian audience, in other people. Excuse me, I'm optimist.
We'll take one more question.
First, Alice and Simone, thank you both for speaking today. My question is for Alice. What was it like after you left the apartment above the shop and when you and your family came to America? how you were received?
Very interesting. When the wife of the smuggler arrived at Simon's house, we boarded at the time. I remember that she advised all of us not to speak at all. My grandma was with us, and she didn't even speak any Flemish or French. She spoke Yiddish, imagine. And she told her, do not open your mouth, just sit there. And then, of course, we had 3 inspections. One, I think it was the Belgian people who came up and asked for our papers. And I remember, I don't know if anybody mentioned that 24 of my letters were discovered, written at age 11, that Simon had in the attic in a trunk, written in Flemish. I don't speak Flemish anymore. I can't even read my own letters. In which I state how the feelings that I had during this inspection, how I felt like vomiting, how seriously dangerous it was. But then, and I was writing to Ita, his sister. But everything went well, I said, Ita. And then the Germans came. No, first the French and then the Germans. And we finally arrived at Besançon, where the husband of the real smuggler appeared, and he had bribed a German, I don't know, Gestapo, whatever it was, at the border. And we had to be at the border by 8 p.m. or the guards would be changing. And as long as I live, will I remember that ride. A German officer sprang on the running board. And I thought, okay, this is it, we have found out. But it was the bribed one. And he ordered aufmachen, open up the barrier. And we went over to the unoccupied France, into Lyon. And the smuggler didn't even have an address where to locate my father. But he said, there is a French restaurant called La Coupole, and all the refugees go there. Would you believe, ladies and gentlemen, there was my father and my brother. And that's how we got reunited. Does that answer your question?
Okay, I'm going to say just a few words now. I'm going to be really quick. On behalf of my father, my brother, I would like to say how grateful we are to the Netos family. They received us and they accept us like family. This was really something for us. I got a little bit of goosebumps when I'm saying that now. And the magnificent cuteness of those two. This is unbelievable. You cannot imagine it. They are really close. I've never seen my grandfather like this. He told me, yeah, I reached and I found my oldest friend in Romania. You don't know how significant is it for me. And I just wanted to share that with you because this is so inspiring. It's so amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing this moving story. For those of us like myself who have families who were in the Holocaust, it's become a lifelong mission, as Dan knows, to find out as much information as we can, and we have different threads that we piece together, and then we have to fill in the gaps. And this is just so beautiful that you found each other. It truly is a miracle and a remarkable story. So, and thank you for sharing it with all of us today.
Thank you for being here today and thank you guys for coming. This is such an incredibly moving story and really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for people to connect like this. And one more round of applause, I think, for